show.
Welcome to episode 52 of the Gluttons For Punishment Podcast, or GFP, a Toronto Maple Leafs and NHL podcast hosted by Michael Lepore and Anthony Bruno. He's Lepore, I'm Bruno. Thank you so much for listening and watching us on YouTube as well. If you're a new listener and you enjoy the show, we would really appreciate it if you give us a 5-star rating and review on both Apple and Spotify. And if you're watching us on YouTube and you enjoy the content, it would be a big time help if you smash the like button, subscribe to the channel, and ring the notification bell so you know exactly when the GFP podcast is posting some new content. All right, everybody. As of February 15th, 2022, the Toronto Maple Leafs continue to sit in third place in the Atlantic Division. An absolute buzzsaw of an Atlantic Division with the Florida Panthers and Tampa Bay Lightning. Since we last spoke on this show, the Leafs with 2 wins and 2 losses. We will get into all that and give you our thoughts and opinions on everything that has gone down with this team, as well as some other Canadian teams from around the NHL. But before we get into all that, it is time to welcome in my partner in crime, Mr. Michael Lepore. How you doing, man?
I'm doing well, Anthony Bruno. The sun is shining, but it's like minus 20 out. Horrible Canadian winter lately in Ottawa. As you mentioned, episode 52. Shout out goes to Martin Marinson.
Let's go.
Let's go where? I'm not quite sure. But we said last week when we talked about Gardner at 51, if he was the most criticized player in the history of the Maple Leafs, Marinson's on that list. He's definitely on that list as like a Twitter joke for Maple Leafs fans. He did win a Calder Cup with the Marlies, and he'll always be remembered for that. And it was always that thing, like he was a good AHL defenseman, but his game just couldn't translate into the NHL. He's now playing in the Czech Republic, so he's somebody else's problem, which is good to feel for the Toronto Maple Leafs and their fans. And 52 episodes, Bruno. It's like sort of like a year worth of weekly podcasts. We've hit the number. But anyways, contest time on the Gluttons For Punishment podcast. As everybody knows, we love to give stuff away. Right now, the contest is for 2 Funko Pops. We have an Austin Matthews. We have a Connor McDavid. If you would like to get your hands on one of these Funko Pops, like this video, subscribe to the channel, and comment down below with the answer who you think of the 2 players will win the Stanley Cup first and why. Let's hear it, everyone.
Love it, Lepore. We are so excited to give away these 2 Funko Pops of Matthews and McDavid. Just to reiterate what Lepore said, to enter the contest, you have to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and then in the comments section down below, tell us who's going to win the Stanley Cup first, Austin Matthews or Connor McDavid, and why. And I want the comment section to be on absolute fire. There's already been some really good entries for the contest. We have our eyes on all of them.
Yeah.
But we will be giving away these Funko Pops in the very near future. So be sure to get your entries in as soon as possible. And Lepore, just going back a second to Martin Marinson, that dude was an absolute disaster.
Horrible.
I just had to give my take on that. And for whatever reason, Babcock used to love that guy because
I was
he
gonna
was 6'5"
say
and had a long reach, and it was a mess.
Yeah, he gave away the winning goal in Game 6 against the Capitals. Am I right? Like he turned it over behind the net or something.
I can't even count the amount of turnovers that dude had. It was just was a mess every single night.
Yeah, I'd love to talk to hockey people about something like that. Is that simply just a case of, again, he was a good AHL player, but then he just gets to that one level higher and the game's just too fast for him. And like his brain and his body can't keep up, where some players, some players adapt quickly. Sometimes it takes them some time. So with him, like in the AHL, he showed that potential, but just you use the right word. Like he was a disaster, like an absolute disaster. But another joke in the history of Leafs folklore, Martin Marinson.
Oh yeah, Martin Marinson, Aki Berg. He's going down in that exact same conversation with guys like that. Jurge Lume. I could go on with a couple other guys too, but
maybe he picked up Hal Gill.
Oh God, Hal Gill.
Commissaric when we picked him up on that big contract.
Just stop, Lepore. Stop.
Yeah, Leafs defenseman of the last 20 years. That'll be a podcast episode for sure.
Oh God, yeah, we can do an hour show on that.
Pavel Kabina, that was another one.
Oh my God, just stop. Stop.
We're running out of time just listing Toronto Maple Leafs terrible defensemen.
Oh my goodness. All right, Lepore, let's just get into this episode right now and talk some Leafs. So since we last spoke, just to go over the last 4 games briefly, we're going back to Monday, February 7th. The Leafs were at home to the Carolina Hurricanes and picked up a 4-3 overtime victory. Mitch Marner with 2 goals and an assist in the game, scoring the OT winner. He had scored in 8 straight games up until that point. And Peter Mrazek against his former team making 28 saves in the win. But then the Leafs began a 3-game Western road trip, starting with the Calgary Flames, and got pumped 5-2. Calgary snapping Toronto's 6-game winning streak. Another note from this game, Jake Muzzin was back in the lineup after missing 7 games with a concussion. But the story of this one was Jacob Markstrom. The dude made 46 saves. He was an absolute brick wall because the Leafs outshot the Flames 48-26. The Calgary scored 3 goals in less than 3 minutes in the second period, blew it wide open. Campbell allowed 5 goals. Wasn't a great game. And then 2 days later, the Leafs go into Vancouver to play the Canucks. And
more the same.
Thatcher Demko made 51 saves. So it was outrageous. The Leafs outshot the Flames and Canucks 101-50 over those 2 games and lost both games.
Awesome.
And it was the first time they lost back-to-back games in regulation since October 23rd and 25th.
There you go.
Just insane. So the Leafs had their, 2-game losing streak there, but they bounced back Monday, February 14th on Valentine's Day in Seattle against the Kraken, getting 6 goals from 6 different players to beat the Kraken 6-2. So Lepore, just tracking back a little bit. Give me your thoughts on what we saw from this team.
Yeah, touching on the Carolina game, it was great to see Marner be a hero. And what even made it a better story was Matthews taking that knock on the head and leaving the game. Us all nervous. And then Marner shows that he can be the star, and he ties the game and then wins the game. So good for Mitch. The next 2 games, I'll kind of lump them together. Like, you went over the shot totals. You can make of those games what you want. And I saw there was some banter on Twitter after the Flames game specifically, talking about how like the Flames ran Toronto out of the building and were more physical. And to me, it was the perfect example of looking at a score of a game and the pucks that went in and the pucks that stayed out, and making an assessment based on that rather than looking at the underlying numbers of the game. Because if I remember correctly, MoneyPuck had that game at a 50-50. And with that final score, like, you wouldn't think that was the case, especially with Toronto on the road. But as you said, Markstrom played very well. He's the real deal, man. He is the real deal. That's a very good goalie. Like, he always looks big in the net, very confident. And then you move over to the next night where it's more of the same against the Vancouver Canucks. Another very good goalie, Demko. This one was even worse. Like, it was actually hilarious how good Demko played from start to finish of the game. Now, like, I dug up this stat on the Leafs' last 6 losses in regulation, and make of this what you wish. I actually think it's a really good stat, a very, very good stat. So in the Leafs' last 6 losses in regulation, they lost to the Jets. The Leafs had 35 shots. Lost to Tampa. Leafs had 38 shots. Lost to Arizona. Remember that one? Leafs had 46 shots. Against the Rangers, 38 shots. That Flames game, 48 shots. And then the Canucks, 53 shots.
That's a lot of shots.
That's a lot of shots. So at the end of the day, you look at these games that the Leafs are losing in regulation. I hate to use the old term, but yeah, they're getting goalied. Or you can just look at it and say, it's the advanced stats thing where sometimes the puck just doesn't go in for you, and then other nights you explode, like last night where they scored 6. Am I right? So yeah, like make of that what you want. Like, people could say, oh, they're trailing, they were losing, that's why they got so many shots. But at the end of the day, it's better than lose. You can't say the Leafs don't show up for these games. I mean, like the lowest shot total in their last 6 regulation losses is 35, 38 twice, 46, 48, and 53. Like that's absolutely crazy. And I guess what math I'd love to do is in those 6 games, add up the total amount of shots and the Leafs shooting percentage in those 6 games. And I'm sure it's a number that makes no sense as far as the history of hockey goes and pucks that should go in.
It's probably like sub 8%, I would imagine.
Oh, I'd be shocked if it was even that high. But I got to say, man, maybe call me the Leaf fan, but that game against Seattle, I was worried because, they lose 2 in a row, but they played amazing. They're playing Seattle. So you're thinking maybe they won't be as up for the game as they should be. And I just didn't want to have to hear about it. And I know that sounds selfish and stupid, but I didn't want to have to hear about it if the Leafs lost 3 games in a row. Right. But they got the W, scored a lot of goals. They made up for those goals they didn't score against Calgary and Vancouver. Nice to see some different guys score. Like Kerfoot finally got off the schneid. He has not been very good lately as far as points go. So that was great, man. So great to get back on the winning track. And with some games coming up this week against some good teams, we have the Penguins and is it the Blues on the weekend? Is that right?
Yeah. So the Penguins on Thursday and the Blues on Saturday. Both games are at Scotiabank.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Yeah. So going back to that stat you brought up, Lepore, over the last 6 regulation losses and all the shots the Leafs had, you mentioned it. The counterpoint to that is, well, they're probably chasing most of these games and they're firing all these shots. But, it would be a totally different story. And you also kind of touched on this if they were, only putting like 20 shots on goal and just getting absolutely dominated. But, they're putting 35 plus shots on goal in all of those games. They're throwing the kitchen sink at these teams when they're down. And I do like that from this team.
For sure.
It's frustrating when they get 40 shots on goal and lose because it seems like the Leafs do this more than any other team. And I'm sure if I dug through the box scores and looked at the stats, you'd probably see similar outcomes with the Colorado Avalanche and even the Florida Panthers for that matter, where there's games that those teams are out shooting teams like crazy and still finding ways to lose. But I can't imagine there's a team that does it more than the Leafs. So that's been a little bit frustrating, but I do like how aggressive they've been when they're down. They know they got to put goals on the board. They know they got to do whatever it takes to get back into some of these games. And I do like the way that Sheldon Keefe coaches. And like I said, they're very aggressive. They always have their foot on the pedal for the most part. So I think that's definitely a positive from the Leafs. Let's touch on this Calgary game and I guess this Calgary team in general.
Yeah.
Because even though the Leafs lost 5-2, like you said, it's not like Calgary completely dominated the game by any means. And sure, you could look at that big Zadorov hit on Andre Kasha and you could say, he ran him over. Like that was a monster hit. Yeah. But I don't really agree with the point like, that's what gave Calgary all their juice and that's what led them to victory. And they were more physical than the Leafs and they ran them out of the building from a physical standpoint. Like, I don't necessarily buy that. It was that stretch that Calgary scored 3 goals in less than 3 minutes.
Yeah,
the second period. And 3 of their 5 goals, Lepore, came from defensemen.
Yeah. That Rasmus Anderson one, they showed like the replay from behind him. And they all say, it thread the needle. It was like incredible. Like, and this camera angle had it just like sailing through everyone and just like picking the corner. It's like beautiful shot. Credit to him.
Yeah. Like to see 3 goals from defensemen, that doesn't happen very often. But listen, credit to Calgary because I think they're a very good team. And
very good team.
I'm on the record. Same with you. We initially did not like the Daryl Sutter hiring. And to be fair to us, Lepore, last year, Calgary sucked.
He did suck.
Like pre-Daryl Sutter and post-Daryl Sutter hiring, that team was bad.
Yep.
There was a lot of issues there. And sure, you could sit here now and say, well, they needed a year to learn his system and this was always going to work. You're crazy if you thought that was a slam dunk to work. But I will admit, I was wrong. And I think you would admit that you were also wrong about Daryl Sutter because this team is the real deal right now, in my opinion, at least.
I think so. Can we look back at last season? And I thought about this with the Flames, because when people were talking about the Canadian division before the season started, a lot of people kind of penciled in the Flames for the playoffs. I know I did, just based on their lineup, a lot of good players.
Yeah, same here.
Yeah. And then they had a terrible season. They just didn't have a good season. As you mentioned before, and after Sutter, they were losing games. And I will say about the Flames, even when I was criticizing them or questioning the Sutter hiring at the highest point, if you would have asked me why they're bad, I wouldn't have really had an answer for you. Where some teams, like, this team lacks talent, or this team is too top heavy, or this team has no goaltending, or their top six defensemen just aren't good enough. But with the Flames, I was always just kind of confused. I just kind of had the assumption that it's an unhappy team. Like, there was all those rumblings about Johnny Gaudreau being unhappy, maybe asking for a trade. So I kind of circled that. But this year they've turned it around. So should we say we're surprised? I don't think so, like, based on the lineup. So props to the Flames, man. Props to the Flames. That's a good team. They play big. They have goaltending, and they just made that addition that we'll get to. So they're going to be a tough out in the Western Conference, man. They really are.
Yeah, like, I'm not surprised that the Flames are a playoff team. I'm surprised they're as good as they are.
Yeah, fair
because
enough.
You look at, just the regular stats, like, for example, goals against. Like, right now, the Flames are second in the NHL in goals against per game.
Wow.
And you could say a lot of that is Jacob Markstrom, who leads the league in 8 shutouts. The dude's been amazing. .926 save percentage.
8 shutouts. Wow.
8 shutouts for Markstrom this year.
What's the record for a season? We'll have to look that one up.
We'll have to look that one up. But what I can tell you, Lepore, is that he's got double the amount of shutouts right now than any other goalie in the league.
Yeah, because Campbell's got like 3. I think when he was in all the
Campbell's got
4.
And then
Okay.
Sorokin on the Islanders also has 4. And Markstrom is doubling both of those guys up with 8. Pretty crazy. So you could say, a part of it's Jacob Markstrom, but obviously the system as well that Daryl Sutter runs. Because as we know, you go back to his Kings days, you go back to even his first stint with the Flames, he always has his teams playing a tight defensive structure. And they're always one of the best defensive teams in the NHL. But the most surprising thing to me is how good this team has been offensively. And again, just looking at goals for per game, Calgary right now, 8th in the NHL, scoring 3.3 goals per game. Pretty solid clip for them.
8th in goals for. He said 2nd in goals against.
2nd in goals against.
That's impressive, man.
That's really good. And you could even look at some of the underlying numbers. Like, if you look at Corsi and expected goals percentage, scoring chance percentage, like, they're up there in all of these stats. I took a look yesterday on Natural Stat Trick. So you look at some of the underlying numbers as well. This team is controlling play. They're great on both sides of the puck. They're getting excellent goaltending. Like you said, Lepore, they're tough to play against. They're a physical team. You have Johnny Gaudreau, who's back to his 99-point form from a few seasons ago, because we didn't know if Johnny Gaudreau would ever get back to what we saw when he had that 99-point season.
Yeah.
And you look at his numbers right now. I mean, this dude has been unreal this year. 58 points in 45 games. Matthew Tkachuk, 50 points in 45 games. Lindholm almost at a point a game. Our boy Andrew Mangiapane with 24 goals this season for Calgary. Like,
until he scored on us the other night.
Yeah, exactly. But they got some talent, man, across the board. Could they use some more talent? Yes, but that just came courtesy of the Montreal Canadiens, Lepore, who traded Tyler Toffoli to the Calgary Flames for a package including a 1st-round pick, a 5th-round pick, prospect Emil Heineman, and forward Tyler Pitlick. So they have some reinforcements, or at least one reinforcement on the way so far. So this team is looking pretty legit, man.
Yeah. And I kind of totally forgot Toffoli was with Sutter in LA. Kind of dawned on me later on. I'm like, oh, there you go. Brought him in. Wonder if he has any other Kings or former Kings circle they'd like to bring into the lineup. But I think it's a great move. It's a great move. At the end of the day, there's nothing negative you could say about it from the Flames standpoint. They got a guy who can score. They got a guy with term. They got a guy who has shown in the playoffs he can be an integral part of a run. And Toffoli just seems like a guy as well, too, that is liked in the room. He seems like a guy who is easy to play with on a line. So all positive from the Flames side. How do you feel about what they gave up? I will ask you.
I don't mind what they gave up because I think you had to expect that a first round pick was going back.
Yeah, no brainer.
You just go back over the past couple of trade deadlines. You see some of the players that have gone for first round picks, whether it's Blake Coleman, Barclay Goodrow, Nick Foligno. What was the Foligno package? A first and 2/4?
Something like that.
The Leafs paid something in that range. So you knew a first round pick was going in. It's a top 10 protected pick. Now, I don't think Calgary's going to finish in the bottom 10 unless they do a complete nosedive. So I don't mind what they gave up. And then obviously they threw in a 5th rounder, which whatever, it's a 5th round pick. That prospect, I don't know too much about Emil Heineman, to be honest with you, but I mean, I don't think he's that good.
He's been traded twice already because I think, if I remember correctly, he was a 2nd round pick of the Panthers. And I think he was in that Sam Bennett deal.
Yes, he was.
Yeah. And then now he's getting moved again. He's one of those like Swedish elite league guys who, I mean, everyone dreams about being incredible, and more times than not doesn't work out. But as you said, you raise your eyebrows to a guy getting traded twice, but he's a 2nd round pick. Maybe Montreal can figure it out.
Yeah. And I think it's a really good trade for the Calgary Flames. And then when you consider his contract as well.
Oh, great contract.
How he still has 2 years after this season at $4.25 million. So it's a really good number for Tyler Toffoli. And he's a guy who's going to come in, and it's not like you're expecting him to carry the load. He's going to be a complementary piece to the offensive stars you already have. And he's a guy who's a 4-time 20-goal scorer. He can get hot. He can go on a run. He can score, 3 goals over 2 games in the playoffs. He's got a great shot. So I think it's a great guy to insert either in their top 6. You could play him on the 3rd line. You can play him on the power play. I like Tyler Toffoli. I think he's a good player. Again, I don't think he's, necessarily moving the needle in a big way by any means, but I think it's a really nice complementary piece for this team to add, a team that I think right now is trying to win the Stanley Cup. Because another thing, Lepore, next season, Johnny Gaudreau is an unrestricted free agent. Andrew Mangiapane, RFA. Same thing with Oliver Shillington, who's emerged this year as a really nice defenseman for them. And Matthew Tkachuk, he also needs a new contract. So you have all these guys who need new contracts next season. That could be a mess for Calgary. So I think they're looking at the situation and saying, you know what? We got a really good team this year. This Western Conference really isn't that good. Something that me and you have talked about on a number of podcasts recently. So they're saying, you know what? Screw it. Let's try to win the damn thing right now.
Think they're done?
I don't think they're done. I think you bring up a good point. I think they definitely have some more moves that they're looking at. Again, I don't know exactly what players they're looking at. I would imagine they probably want to bring in another defenseman.
Someone said Giordano.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I don't know cap-wise what they'd have to do to figure that out, but that'd be cool.
Get Giordano back?
Buddy, Giordano, Toffoli, and Mangiapane. I might have to become a Flames fan.
We might have to order our Flames jerseys.
Yeah, man. But I'll ask you again, too. There's obviously the Knights, like they have some injuries. Mark Stone just went on LTIR. Eichel's on his way. Are the Flames the favorite in that division to come out? Would you bet on the Flames right now?
I would probably bet on them to win the division.
I think so, too. I'd bet on them in the playoffs. I think they're built for the playoffs.
And you said it, man. This team is so built for the playoffs. Like, you just think about Daryl Sutter's teams from the past and the way that they play, especially come playoff time. Those Kings teams, physical, fast, aggressive, great goaltending. You're seeing the same thing now. And again, I didn't think this team would be this good. And listen, a part of it is definitely Daryl Sutter, and they've bought into his system. But when Johnny Gaudreau is having a bounce back season like this, when Tkachuk is playing this well, and you got this team playing so well on both sides of the puck, this is going to be a very scary outcome playoff time. And yeah, right now, that Pacific Division, I mean, I would imagine it's either Vegas or Calgary who's going to win the division. Just talking about the regular season. Like, I think we could write off Edmonton at this point. I mean, call us crazy if we're going to write them off with, 40 games left or whatever. But
no, it's not crazy.
If you're a betting man right now, I think it's either Calgary or Vegas. And who knows how Vegas is going to look like. Obviously, Eichel's coming back. You know how I think about Eichel. Like, I think he's an absolute star. But with Stone going on LTIR, they're bringing in a star and they're losing a star. And this Calgary team is completely healthy right now. All their stars are healthy at least. So, yeah, man, I think I'm on the Flames to win the Pacific Division as well.
Yeah. We know Vegas will add just because that's their style. They'll add at the deadline. But you know what has to happen? The Flames have to play the Oilers in the playoffs, whether it's the 2-3 or the Flames win the division and the Oilers get a wild card. Please, for the neutral, let that one happen. Because too, the storyline, right? If the Flames come in all hot, Connor McDavid and co knocks them out. That's a big story. That's awesome. And then they'd have momentum. I mean, I wouldn't bet on that happening based on the lineups, but I'm hoping for that. Bring it on. And it would guarantee a Canadian team in the second round, which is always good.
Yeah, you can't go wrong with that. We need more Canadian teams to make some runs here, but you said it, man. That would be incredible for the fans, for the sport of hockey to see a Flames Oilers playoff series.
Fans should be fully back by then too. So let's go. Rock and roll.
Oh my goodness. Alberta would just be booming, man. Amazing. Oh my God. I can't even imagine. That would be so awesome to see. I hope it happens now that you bring it up. And I think, like you said, I think the way that it would happen is that 2-3 matchup. I mean, Calgary could win the division and then play Edmonton as a wild card seed, but could happen as that 2-3 matchup in the Pacific Division. So we'll keep our eye on that.
By the way, I looked up the record for most shutouts in a season. Again, it's a show full of Italians. 1970, Tony Esposito of the Chicago Blackhawks and this number for 1970, 15.
Wow, 15 shutouts
in
1970.
I thought it was going to be one of the goalies in like the dead puck era, the trap era, but no, in 1970, 15 shutouts. That's something, man. I mean,
that
Markstrom,
is insane.
That for Markstrom to get 7 more. If he does, he deserves it. I mean, that's the case, but that's a hell of a record.
That's incredible. I would have guessed like Hasek or Brodeur.
Yeah, like
because I think I feel like one of them hit double digits for sure, either once or maybe multiple times. So I thought maybe one of them had the record, but man, Tony Esposito, 15 shutouts. Yeah. Pretty insane. Yeah. Lepore, looking at some other things that have been happening in this Pacific Division, the Edmonton Oilers recently fired Dave Tippett. And again, we've talked about this Oilers team ad nauseum this year.
Always fun.
They fire Dave Tippett. They bring in Jay Woodcroft, who was the head coach of their AHL affiliate in Bakersfield. They won their first game under Jay Woodcroft, beating the New York Islanders 3-1.
Of course they did.
But do you see this changing this team moving forward in a significant way? Just swapping out coaches here?
My thing with the Dave Tippett firing was I think it happened a month too late. Now, I really like Dave Tippett. And if you look at, someone put a list out once of every time he started with a new team and the record he put up that year compared to the previous year of the other coach. And it's always been like a straight line up. He's done very well. And he was doing well with Edmonton last year. But I just think you could tell a long time ago with this team that they were checked out. And people always talk about whether or not a coach should get fired. And they'll make the argument saying, oh, he was good 6 months ago and now he's not good. No, it's not really what it is. And I think coaches accept it in the way that it's like a boss or a teacher. When you hear that same voice over and over and over again, sometimes you get sick of it and you lose motivation and you don't have confidence in the leader. And I think it's been clear with Edmonton for a long time that it had to be done. It had to be done. Like I said, I think it was probably even a month too late because they were swirling. As to whether or not it's going to change the fortunes of the Edmonton Oilers, I don't know. Like this team needs a kick in the ass. They really do need a kick in the ass. And if that is a coaching change, that's great. They picked up Evander Kane. Maybe they make another move. But I'm going to throw something out there, Bruno.
Okay.
Is it possible? I'm not saying this is how I think. I'm asking the question that the problem on this team is lack of leadership. And when I say that, I'm referring to McDavid and Draisaitl. Because at the end of the day, here I am. I'm the Leafs fan, even though I think it's bullshit. When the Leafs lose, who gets pointed to? The best players who make the most money. And I feel, and again, it's different based on, I think, types of media or the types of cities, how people almost feel kind of sympathetic for certain organizations or like softer towards certain organizations, like they're cute or they're whatever. Like Toronto is like the exact opposite, like full guns a-blazing, fuck them all the time. Everybody hates them. It's hard. It's strict. It's cruel. In Edmonton, I feel kind of like, and again, I'm not saying it's their fault why they're losing, but I almost feel as if McDavid and Draisaitl are kind of getting left off the hook. Now they're putting up numbers, like they're both incredible players, but I think if it was Toronto, nobody would care. If Matthews and Marner were having the exact seasons they were having, but the Leafs were losing, they'd be taking a lot of blame. And I haven't really heard anyone blame McDavid or Draisaitl. And maybe it's something off the ice. I don't know. Like, I hate to be that guy that says you have to be all rah-rah in the locker room and motivate the troops, but maybe that's what they need. I mean, they're losing. I'm more asking the question. They are losing. This team has been through a lot of change. They added Evander Kane. They got a new coach. What does this team need? What don't they have? I guess I'm asking that. Do they not have leadership? Do they not have a veteran presence? I don't know. I don't really know the answer, but like, again, like I'll ask you, is it time that we can at least entertain the idea here that a big part of this is Draisaitl and McDavid?
As much as Oilers fans and hockey fans, for that matter, might hate to hear what you just brought up, the question that you just raised, I think it's a very legitimate concern. I really do, because listen, I will be the first one to tell you that I think this team is poorly built. I don't think they have enough depth. Their goaltending is not good. Defensively, they're not good. They have a lot of issues. But when you look at what Connor McDavid has done over the first 7 seasons of his career, he's in year 7 right now. So over the first 6 years, this team has made the playoffs 3 times. And again, that's not all on Connor McDavid. I think he's incredible. He's already won multiple Hart trophies, I believe, multiple scoring titles. I mean, everyone. I don't want to say everyone, but 97% of hockey fans consider him the best player on the planet.
It's a hot take if you pick somebody else.
Exactly. So when you look at that and you see how talented he is and how talented Draisaitl is, I think you're right, Lepore. I think it would be wrong to completely leave these guys off the hook.
Mm-hmm.
And again, we'll be the first ones to tell you how great those guys are, to tell you how awful the Oilers are around them. But at some point, these guys have to take responsibility. And again, I'm not in the locker room. You're not in the locker room. We're not around this team at all. I mean, obviously, I live in Toronto. You live in Ottawa. We don't know the inner workings of the leadership group there. But I think it's legitimate to bring up those concerns and to talk about these things, because who knows what's going on behind the scenes. It seems like no matter who comes in to coach this team, no matter what players they bring in, no matter what, whether it's Evander Kane or they bring back Jesse Puljujarvi after he was playing in Europe, it's like, they sign Zach Hyman. It almost doesn't matter. This team is still in the exact same spot. They still have the exact same issues. And I think it is fair to a certain degree to kind of throw some blame at Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl, because there has to be something else going on there for this team to not. And again, I think when you have these two players in their primes at the peak of their powers, you should not be trying to scratch and crawl your way to the final playoff spot in the Western Conference. That's embarrassing when you have two players like this, compared to other sports. Can you imagine like LeBron James and Dwayne Wade in their primes, like just barely scraping into the playoffs in the NBA?
Different sport.
It's a totally different sport. I get it.
Yeah.
But it's like when you have two guys that are this talented, and I get it. Hockey's a totally different sport. These guys are only on the ice for 23 minutes out of a 60-minute hockey game. Whereas in basketball, your best players are on the court in a playoff game or regular season game for 30 to 35 to 40 minutes. But my goodness, this team is just so behind where they should be right now. And again, who knows? I don't know if Draisaitl and McDavid aren't providing the leadership that maybe some of these other teams around the league have in their locker rooms. I don't know, but I think it's a fair question to bring up, Lepore, and I don't think you're crazy for raising that.
It'll be interesting because, and again, Oilers fans don't want to hear this, but they can't keep losing. This team cannot keep losing because McDavid and Draisaitl are humans. And I always say this about players. You get one career. One. You can't waste your time. I'd say wasted time, if you'll know what I mean. You can't be sitting around in a bad situation if you deserve a better one. And sometimes people shit on the players for having that mentality, but it's a job. I have a current job. If somebody offers me a better job in a better location, I'm going to take it with a job that has more opportunity to grow, make more money, whatever the excuse is. So it is going to get to a point where these guys go into that office and say, I want out. I want out. And these players are far too good to get the right return for, because you're never going to win those trades. And I don't know. I don't know. Like it kind of happened in Ottawa a few years back with Carlson, like things going around the city, people talking that the team was kind of just built around the idea of like keeping Erik Karlsson happy. So he would resign, and it didn't work. He left. If that was their mission, but I'd love to know what those discussions are in Edmonton right now, because again, they're human. They're human. Eventually they're going to get frustrated and they're going to seek a different opportunity. And sometimes that's not anyone's fault specifically. It's just the circumstances. And right now, the circumstances for those two players aren't good enough. And back to what I said before about even if the blame can go to them, that doesn't come to play in their mind. If they want out, they want out. Whether, it's not my fault or it is my fault, I don't want to be here. So I think it's a great discussion. I think it's a great discussion as to what's wrong with this Oilers team. What do they need to do to get better? And really, what's their ceiling? What is their ceiling? If we looked at the players they have, the contracts they have, all their circumstances, what's the ceiling of this team? Because if it's not very, very high, there's going to be a dark day in Edmonton where one of, if not both, those players asked to play somewhere else.
And right now, I don't think their ceiling is a Stanley Cup. I don't think it's even close to a Stanley Cup. And that's where it should be. Their ceiling should be Stanley Cup winner. When you have two players like this, as I mentioned, for the 500th time, in their primes, at the peak of their powers, coming off MVP seasons, right now also having MVP seasons, even though they've slowed down a little bit. But let's just go back over the last 4 years for this Oilers team. So Dave Tippett was here for 3 years. He came in 2019, 2020. But going back even a couple years before that, so they missed the playoffs in 2018. They missed the playoffs again in 2019. In 2020, they get in and lose in the qualifying round to the Chicago Blackhawks.
McDavid's first year was 2015.
Yeah, McDavid's first year was 2015, 2016.
And he got hurt that year, right?
That was the year he played. I believe it was like 40 games. Yeah. He missed like half the season.
Okay.
But just going over the last 4 years. So since they lost in the second round to the Ducks, like that was the year. It was McDavid's second year. I believe that was his first MVP season. They lost in 7 games in the second round to the Ducks. And then we thought, okay, this is the beginning of a run here for the Oilers where they're going to make it to the second round, the third round. They're going to get to a cup final within the next couple of years.
With this guy. That.
But it has been a mess since then. Like I said, missed the playoffs in 18, missed the playoffs in 19, 2020. They lose in 4 games in the qualifying round to that awful Chicago Blackhawks team, which was one peg above the Montreal Canadiens. Remember, the Habs were invited, as I like to say,
Yeah,
as the
24 and
23.
Seed. Yeah.
And I believe the Blackhawks were the 23rd seed in the playoffs that year in the bubble. So they lose in 4 games. And then last year, the year Connor McDavid had 104 points in 56 games, wins the MVP again. Draisaitl, another amazing season. They get swept in the first round of the Winnipeg Jets. They're 1-7 in their last 8 playoff games. And again, you could blame the pieces that have been put around those two guys. But I think, like you said, Lepore, to bring it back to that, some of the blame also has to go on Draisaitl and McDavid. As much as people hate to hear that, it's the same thing with the Leafs. When the Leafs lost to the Habs, Matthews and Marner were getting the blame because they didn't show up. They didn't score. They didn't put up the points. And the same thing can be said about Draisaitl and McDavid. It's not like they were, putting up 2 points a game against the Jets when they lost in 4 games in the first round last season.
Yeah.
Their numbers have taken a hit as well. Even this year, they started off the season white hot. Both of them were at one point. It was absurd. They were both on pace for like 180 points.
Yeah.
They have slowed down significantly since the start. And that offense and that power play as well has slowed down. So that team has a lot of issues. And I know recently they have sort of turned it around after they went through that egregious stretch where they had like 2 wins in 13 games or whatever it was. But I think that team still has a long way to go, man.
Yeah, it's funny because, again, I was talking about markets and how different teams get treated differently. The Leafs have had their bad luck in the playoffs. We all know that. We all laugh at it. And we hear it every year when they get knocked out that, this doesn't work. And you look at the season the Toronto Maple Leafs are having, and let's say they do get in the playoffs, or they're going to get in the playoffs. Let's say when they do make the playoffs, they lose in the first round in 6 or 7 to a good team again. And it's the same old story. And the take will be, we all know this is a good team. This team's on pace for like 115 plus points. They're breaking records as far as their power play and their goals. They seem to have depth everywhere. But at the end of the day, it's result-based, and this just doesn't work. You tell me, Bruno, and Oilers fans comment down below, would that ever come to play with Edmonton, where they could just finally say McDavid and Draisaitl in this situation does not work? So now I'm saying, before I made the comment about how them being unhappy and wanting to leave, now I'm taking the side of, could it come from the organization's end saying that, you know what, this just isn't working, we got to move on? Or is it just crazy talk when you have the best player in the world? You can't think that way.
Yeah, I don't think you can think that way. I think that's a code red situation. If it gets to the point where they say, you know what, we got to move Leon Draisaitl and try something new. Again, I don't think they would ever consider trading Connor McDavid, but it could get to a point. I don't think this is crazy talk to say that the Oilers behind the scenes could at one point start thinking about moving a guy like Draisaitl. Like, I would never do it. I wouldn't trade either of those guys. But again, it's like, what's the definition of insanity when you keep doing the same thing over and over and you expect different results? And we've seen this when it comes to the Leafs, right? But it is an interesting point you bring up, because when the Leafs keep losing in the first round and Matthews and Marner aren't living up to expectations, and the same thing with, Tavares and Nylander or Morgan Riley or the goaltending, they all get shit on. But for whatever reason, Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl never take the heat.
It's almost like, thank God they're here. It's kind of,
they never take the heat. Now, to be fair to them, they both have really good playoff numbers. Like, you just look at their playoff careers in general, they put up points in the playoffs. But it is weird how those two, over the last 2 playoffs, as awful as Edmonton has been, it seems like those guys have been let off the hook. And I think for the most part, it's because Draisaitl won the MVP in 2020. McDavid won the MVP last year. So Edmonton fans and Edmonton media and NHL fans in general say, well, these 2 guys are the MVPs the last 2 seasons. We can't possibly blame them. It's everybody else. But at some point, I think it's the same thing that happens with the Leafs. You have to look at those star players as well. And whether it's from a production standpoint, a leadership standpoint, defensive standpoint, you have to look at those two guys to lead the way. And if they're not getting the results come playoff time, some blame, and I don't know how much blame it is, but some blame has to be put on their shoulders.
I'd say even this year, Bruno, what if they miss the playoffs? Like, I think the playoff thing, if they make the playoffs, they put up numbers, they lose, people are going to let them off the hook. If they miss the playoffs, nobody's going to care. So it's different. And again, like from the other side organizationally, and again, I don't think this will happen, but ironically enough, it's similar to, I see it kind of in the same way as the Gretzky situation when he was in Edmonton. The Gretzky trade, one of the most famous days in the history of the National Hockey League. Gretzky was going into the last year of his deal. And Peter Pocklington knew that there were teams out there that were going to be willing to pay Wayne way more than he was paying him. So he had to get a deal. He had to take advantage of his asset. Now, back in those days, it was cash. Pocklington got $15 million plus picks and players. So it's not the case now. But now we're getting way ahead of ourselves here. But you can't lose Connor McDavid in free agency. So at some point, the thought process of a deal for both of these guys, for that matter, has to trigger the Edmonton Oilers organization. Your job is to be competitive, both short term and put yourself in the best position to be competitive long term. We'll see where they are as we get to that point, a year or two before the contracts are up. But at some point, it will come from the organizational side. We have to get something and think of the haul. So it would be the right decision. So it's going to be a movie, man. The Edmonton Oilers are going to be a 5-star blockbuster movie in the next couple of years. I really think so. It's going to be a blast to watch, to see what happens. And I'm throwing all these ideas out because, and I'm sure people have been shitting on me in the comments during all these rants, but I have no idea what I think will happen. Because, like, I'll be fair. If someone told me that the Oilers were going to make one or two moves either this season or in the offseason and next year be a very good team, because of the confidence I have in Draisaitl and McDavid, I wouldn't be that surprised. Because again, we talk about their ceiling, the ceiling of those two guys, if there's a few tweaks to the lineup and the team, that ceiling is very, very high. So I wouldn't be shocked. But at the same time, if they're a bad team that misses the playoffs, I'm not shocked either. So I have no idea what's going to happen. I'm just sitting back as the neutral fan who I cheer for the Oilers. Again, Canadian team. I've said it on the show a million times, I grew up a Gretzky fan. But for the most part, I'm going to sit down. I'm going to eat my popcorn and enjoy the show because I have no idea what's going to happen. And I think there's going to be a lot of drama.
You nailed it, man. Get your popcorn ready because I think as things stand right now, if you're Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl, why on earth would you want to re-sign with this team when your deal's up? Like, why on earth would you want to re-sign with this team? Based on this organization and how they have shown to be just completely incompetent when it comes to building an actual winning team around you, why on earth would you want to stay there? So just looking at their contracts, Draisaitl after this season, 3 more years at $8.5 million, which is arguably the best contract in the NHL value-wise.
Yeah, it's
and then Connor McDavid, 4 more years after this season at $12.5 million. And you said it, man. It could certainly get to a point where these guys aren't getting, the assurance from McDavid and Draisaitl that they're going to re-sign. And it could get to a point where they're panicking and being like, man, we got to deal these guys and get assets or else they're going to walk their asses out the door as free agents and we're going to get nothing. And at that point, who knows how far they make it in the playoffs? Who knows if they get to a Stanley Cup final? So you said it, man. It's going to be extremely interesting over the next few seasons to see how that plays out with those two players, because if this team continues to fail to build around them, and if those two guys continue to fail to get it done come playoff time, then we could see a situation where both of them leave as free agents or are traded for that matter, so Edmonton could get assets. And as crazy as you think that me and Lepore are, I think these are real discussions that have to be
It's going to happen. It's going to happen eventually. Either this team is going to be successful or those guys are going to get traded or walk in free agency. Take your pick. It's one of those three. And again, it's going to be amazing because I have no idea what to predict. But even that really bad situation that people think is completely unthinkable, it could very well happen eventually. It's on a clock. right? So
Tick,
awesome, man.
talk, tick,
Oh,
talk.
Edmonton.
Oh, Oilers fans. Again, I'll say it. You might think I hate your team and I don't want the Oilers to succeed, but I think I speak for Lepore when I say this as well. We want to see Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl and this Oilers team.
We're giving away a Connor
play
McDavid
well.
Funko Pop. We love you guys.
We really want to see them play well because I really genuinely believe the NHL would be in a better place if you have the best player in the world having success in the playoffs and just being relevant come May and June when everyone's watching hockey. You want those two guys to be the center of attention. You want those two guys to be playing their best hockey and generating buzz for this league. So we hope at some point that they figure it out. But Lepore, it's time to move on now.
Yeah, let's move on. How long was that one? That was a long one. But we'll move on to, we're going from the Oilers, which is probably the team in the league, or at least in the debate, for that you could talk forever about, talk about different things, to the Seattle Kraken. So we'll try our best to keep the momentum going, everyone.
Yeah, let's talk about this Kraken game real quick. So mentioned it off the top of the show. The Leafs snapped their 2-game losing streak. The first time they had lost back-to-back games in regulation since October 23rd and 25th. They come into Seattle, pump the Kraken 6-2, 6 goals from 6 different players. Marner has been ridiculous recently, 22 points in his last 11 games. Matthews has 16 points in his last 8 games. Campbell finally had a decent game, although he did let in a bad goal, which we could potentially talk about.
I'm sure
but what are your thoughts, Lepore, on what you saw from this Seattle game?
As I said earlier, I was really worried about how they'd come out for this game, but they went in, they did their business, they beat up on a bad team. And again, the goal scorers, I mean, minus Marner scoring the goal he scored, and he's on absolute fire. The rest of the goal scorers, it was Kerfoot, Bunting, Kampf, Kasha, Muzzin, and I got him.
Yep,
So
nailed it.
So to see like that lineup of guys score goals is great. See Campbell get a win. Of course, because there should be a weekly segment called "Because of Course." Jared McCann scoring, and the perfectly round 20th goal of the season for Jared McCann. So just take that knife into the heart, Leafs fans. Like, just take it.
We protected Justin Hall in the expansion draft, and Jared McCann now has 20 goals as a member of the Kraken.
Yeah, if he hits that number, like, I mean, I'm not going to say he's going to hit 40, but that'll just be like new. To be fair, I'm almost surprised this isn't more of a story. I know like Leafs fans have talked about it, but how I said earlier that different teams get treated differently by media and fans. People love to make fun of the Toronto Maple Leafs. People love to point out their faults, their mistakes. I feel like this maybe hasn't got the attention it's deserved, maybe because they're winning. So it's that whole thing, they're winning, but man, that was a tough one.
And Lepore, not to pat myself on the back, I said it when it happened.
Yeah,
I thought it was egregious. The Leafs protected Justin Hall, and now you're seeing him fall off a cliff, and McCann is scoring 20 goals. So I talked about this, I was so fired up at the time, and I still think it's terrible looking back at it. And I think now Leaf fans are finally starting to come around and realizing, oh my God, what the hell was this team thinking protecting Justin Hall? But anyway.
We'll talk about positive stuff. So as I mentioned, Mitchell Marner, the playmaker, has 11 goals in his last 11 games on an absolute tear. And that assist he got on it was Kampf who got that one, who banged it in
the
on
shorthanded goal.
Okay. So I often say in the National Hockey League that sometimes certain plays get attention because they're like, I don't know, like a dipsy doodle or some sort of move that's cheesy. And as someone who's played hockey, a lot of these moves, like, they're not hard to do. It sounds kind of weird, but they almost look more impressive than they actually are. But that being said, there are a lot of plays that are very difficult to do, and they look kind of simple, but there are certain plays that really show a player's talent. For Mitch Marner, again, they had a solid lead, but we're going to pump the tires of a Leafs player here. For Mitch Marner to have the confidence and the balls to do that in that situation, and even like he pushed his ego aside, he could have just scored. Like, here's this kind of absolute tear. You probably say, no, Mitch, shoot the puck. But he pulls that move. What a move. Guts, confidence, patience, vision. You even see when he's flying down the right wing, he took a peek. He took a quick peek to make sure he was like who was with him. Makes that move. And the story of the day, I played hockey this morning. I was on the ice at 7 a.m. I had a breakaway. I had a guy behind me, and I tried it. And it got broken up and we didn't score.
Oh, no.
So people were quick to make fun of the Leaf fan trying the Marner move the day after. But what a play. Like, I'm so, for all the shit Marner took because of the playoffs last year in the offseason, to see him playing the way he's playing. And I will say it, man, he looks happy. He's like, remember his like rookie season, his first 2 years in the league, popping around, smiling. Everyone loved him. Mitch Marner was the cute teddy bear. I'm not going to say he's all the way back, but he looks happy on the ice, and I love it.
Lepore, first of all, we need video of you trying that Marner assist.
Yeah, no. And even me, I mean, people would probably call me a selfish player. So just the shock that I didn't shoot it. But
I would literally pay. I would pay. I don't know how much money, but I would love to see Michael Lepore trying to pull off what Mitch Marner did against the Seattle Kraken.
Yeah, we'll set up cameras next time at 7 a.m. Pickup hockey at the Nepean Sportsplex. Steve Yzerman Arena, by the way. Steve Yzerman Arena.
Love it, Lepore. Love it. But yeah, man, no, it's that move by Marner against the Kraken. That's Mitch Marner right there. That one play shows you everything you need to know about him. Just how smart he is. Like, we all know the skill level is through the roof, but that guy's hockey IQ is just absurd. I mean, there's like 5 guys in the league who can make a play like that, who are, sometimes 2-3 steps ahead of everybody else. And the thing with Mitch Marner, like, he doesn't have blazing speed. Like, he's fast. He's definitely, he has above average speed, but he doesn't have like Connor McDavid speed or even some of the other guys you saw in the fastest skater competition during All-Star weekend. But the way that this guy thinks on the ice, it's just another level. Like, to have the balls, like you said, to pull that off, to just drop the puck back like that. I mean, it was insane, and it was amazing to see. And you nailed it, Lepore. He looks so happy right now. The confidence is back, because you go back to the playoffs where he failed to score against Montreal. He's right now, I believe it's 1 goal in his past 18 playoff games. He had a slow start to the season.
What was that stat? Like 100 games without a power play goal or something?
Yeah, 100 games without a power play goal.
Crazy.
All the shit that he's gone through, and he's taken the brunt of it in Leafs Nation. It hasn't been Austin Matthews. It hasn't been John Tavares. William Nylander used to take it, especially around his whole contract saga.
Now Willie's shut everyone up.
Yeah, he's completely shut everybody up. But Marner has been the whipping boy for the last couple of seasons. And to see him playing with this much confidence, and to see the tear that he's on, 22 points, 11 goals in his last 11 games, it's amazing to see. And honestly, I'm just really happy for the guy. And I hope that when it matters come playoff time, we see the same sort of jump and confidence and just amazing skill when it matters most. So that's what I'm looking forward to. And I think Mitch is on a mission this year, Lepore. Yeah. I think he wants to shut some people up, kind of like William Nylander did in last year's playoffs.
I hope so. And like, I almost think something must have clicked with him, because remember from earlier in the season how he was never shooting, to the point where it was comical how little confidence he had in his shot, and he was always just kind of laying it off in A+ scoring positions. And he's gone from that to 11 goals in 11 games. Just so something clicked, or he spoke with the right sports psychologist, who knows, or someone's given him confidence somewhere else, or maybe just as the season's gone on, he's relaxed a little bit. He doesn't feel the tension. But awesome, man. Awesome. We hope he keeps rolling.
And speaking of confidence, before we end this podcast, Lepore, I want to have a quick chat about someone who doesn't seem to have any confidence right now, despite winning yesterday, and that's Jack Campbell.
Oh,
it seems like he's just not the same guy from the beginning of the season. And I mentioned that soft goal he let in on the shot from Jared McCann, and you just look at Campbell's last 16 games, the record's fine, 10-3-2, but he has an .894 save percentage and a 3.19 GAA. So this dude, again, despite getting the win against Seattle on Monday night, I still think he's having some issues both with his play and with his confidence.
Yeah, you can see it. I mean, everyone loves Jack Campbell because he seems like a very positive guy. And before, you could really see it on the ice. I mean, you could see him with his teammates, the fist pumps, he'd make a save, cover the puck, and then give his defenseman a tab, good job. You could see he was saying something. So it was very clear that he was a guy feeling good, and a big part. And because of that, and other reasons, he was at the top of his game. Now, even beyond pucks going in, that sort of body language is not there. It's just not. And how we just said how Marner maybe spoke to the right person to get his confidence up. Maybe Campbell needs the same thing to get his confidence back to where it was before. But who knows? I mean, like, I have a lot of different theories. I mean, this guy had questions about being a starting goalie a few months back, and then he was named an all-star. He's been put on the short list for the Vezina Trophy. There's all this talk about a huge contract, and that's a lot to deal with. So maybe that's what's hurting him. There's just too much on his mind. His expectations for himself are just too high now, and he's overthinking things. But it's cause for concern, because, like, the way I see it, Bruno, is all these past years, if we had to circle one thing that would be the downfall of the Toronto Maple Leafs in the playoffs, it would have been the defensive play. Ironically, how we couldn't score last playoffs. But this year, it's the goaltending. That's the thing you can circle that you're like, that's the Achilles heel. If the Leafs goalie plays well, this team can go on a run. But if not, and we've talked about it before, the goalies who are in the Eastern Conference, average play is not going to be good enough. So I'm freaking out a little bit about that goaltending situation. One thing, though, it makes it more interesting because I'm not going to say, his numbers are going to continue to decline. I mean, they're still very good numbers, and we'll see where he finishes the season. But with the contract situation, I mean, who knows? Like, maybe the Leafs were offering something before and now they will not be. So, I mean, blame him, blame his agent, who knows? But kind of like how I said with the McDavid and Draisaitl thing, it'll be interesting just to watch how that plays out. It'll be very interesting to see how the Campbell situation now stands out. Because a few months ago, Bruno, if someone said Campbell's going to walk in free agency, we would have been pissed. And it's not that he's been like absolutely egregious, but we'd accept it now. We'd be like, yeah, it is what it is, and whatever. So
yeah, he gave us a strong couple of years, at a very nice number on the cap, and now good for him. He's going to go chase some money, and we'll figure out the goaltending situation.
Exactly.
But looking at it now, and especially with the way Peter Mrazek's playing, he's been bad too. And I know people have talked about, Peter Mrazek's like last 4 starts are actually pretty good. But you look at his overall numbers right now, 9 games, he has an .899 save percentage and a 2.95 GAA. So both of the goalies right now do not have a lot of confidence whatsoever. And neither of them are playing well. And again, that could change over the next 35, 40 games leading into the playoffs. And you hope that Jack Campbell's your guy. But like you said, Lepore, I think I'm worried right now as well, because you look at this team across the board, that is the Achilles heel. If they're going to fail to get the job done again in the playoffs right now, and again, things could change, but it looks like right now it will be goaltending that will lead to their downfall, because the Leafs are putting pucks in the net. They're one of the highest scoring teams in the league over the last, you can go back over the last month, 2 months, 3 months. They are scoring no problem. The power play, number 1 in the league. One of the greatest power plays in NHL history right now.
4th right now. I saw that stat. 4th best power play ever.
The power play has been insane. Even the penalty kill. Right now, the Leafs are 6th in the NHL in penalty kill percentage. And going back to last week, they were 3rd in the league in penalty kill. So you have essentially a top 5 special teams unit. Defensively, the Leafs have been good. They're 7th right now in goals against per game. And again, some of that is because Jack Campbell was amazing at the start of the season. But right now, it's the goaltending, man. And and I am definitely a little bit concerned. But before we end this podcast, is there anything else you want to get off your chest about this team?
No, that was a good one. I think we blew off some steam during that podcast, but I will remind everyone about the Connor McDavid and the Austin Matthews Funko Pop giveaway. We spoke a lot about the Oilers on this pod, and I'm sure a lot of shit was thrown at us in the comments. So why not keep it going by liking the video, subscribing to the channel, and telling us why you think this guy will win the cup before this guy.
I love it, Lepore. Once again, please get your entries in for the Connor McDavid and Austin Matthews Funko Pop giveaway. All right, that is going to do it for episode 52 of the Gluttons For Punishment Podcast, or GFP, a Toronto Maple Leafs and NHL podcast hosted by Michael Lepore and Anthony Bruno. So once again, if you are a new listener and you enjoyed the show, it would be a big time help if you give us a 5-star rating and review on both Apple and Spotify. And if you're watching us on YouTube, we would appreciate it so much if you smash the like button, subscribe to the channel, and ring the notification bell so you know exactly when the GFP podcast is posting some new content. So for Michael Lepore, I'm Anthony Bruno, and we will see you in the next one.
Thanks so much, everyone.
Cause on my mic and I say, yo, flow.